back to this week's edition of Conversations from the Trenches. And today we are going to be talking about a topic that is very, very close to most of our hearts. When I say our hearts, of course, I'm talking about women because women and fashion go hand in hand. Fashion, perhaps one of the biggest consumers of fashion are women, right? Or people who are very, very in touch with their feminine side. Now, here's also the problem with fashion, right? Not every woman is very comfortable with fashion. I come across, as a personal branding strategist, I often come across women who have very low body confidence, who have very low body image, poor body image, who don't think of themselves as fashionable. Now, this is the most interesting thing. They think they're smart. They think they dress up for work. They think there's, they do a lot of stuff to fit in. But if you were to put them aside and say, are you fashionable? What does fashion mean to you? Most of them are hitting a blank, right? And for me, there is a problem. If women are not comfortable with the word fashion, and if we are interpreting fashion purely in the context of rigid beauty standards, very unidimensional ways of what looks good and what does not look good, in terms of industry trends, in terms of market driven or influencer driven trends, then we are very externally referenced. We are looking at fashion as a very in a very narrow lens. We are not looking at fashion or style as a mode of self expression. So this was primarily the reason I wanted to have this conversation. The second reason why I want to have a conversation that intersects women with fashion is because, as somebody who's had very bad body image, I've always struggled to dress myself. And last month, I did a photo shoot where I actually had to sit down and look at my body and really look at what worked for me and what did not work for me. And it was a journey unto itself. Now, when I went around looking for clothes that I wanted to wear for the photo shoot, I kind of realized that we have very limited options available in the market. Like, even if you were to walk into a plus size store, the clothes are not very fashionable. It's not something that makes you feel good. And it was almost at this point that I had the pleasure and privilege to meet this beautiful guest of mine, Shamita Basu, who is the founder of an inclusive fashion label called Zayamika. And Shamita and I had a lot, I was very intrigued by what she was doing, particularly the fact that she called it an inclusive fashion label. And of course, over the past, I think, couple of months, we've had a lot of conversations about what inclusive fashion meant and, very specifically, what does adaptive fashion mean? And I came to this understanding that we segregate fashion as inclusive and adaptive for people who we look at as being the minorities, as people in the intersections. And in my mind, being a part of the mainstream, I felt that inclusive fashion was very applicable to me. When I listened to what Shamita said, I said, wow, a lot of what she uses is so relevant to me in my everyday life. So why are we not talking about inclusive fashion and adaptive fashion in the mainstream? For me, inclusive fashion is something that can actually help all of us women. It's not for persons with disabilities. It's not for people on the peripheries of the mainstream. It is for all of us. And therefore, today I am so happy, I am so honored, I'm so privileged to have Shamita join me for a conversation about what fashion is, why does fashion need to be inclusive, and for us to really debunk a lot of myths about fashion so that we walk away from this conversation with a better understanding of what fashion means to us and why should we all be working for inclusive fashion. So Shamita, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. As you notice, I have only introduced you as a founder of the Zymeka label. So may I invite you to tell people a little bit about yourself in your own words? Let people get a sense of who you are.
Thank you so much, Rekha. Thank you for the lovely conversations we've had over time. And I just love the way you kind of are already bringing it together. And I never like the question about tell us something about yourself, but I'll try. um, well, I usually say that I'm somebody who is very curious, somebody who gets excited with problems. actually with solutions. So, if there's something, then I have to go and find a solution to it, or I have to try. And I'm somebody who likes to really know every sentence, every word, every punctuation of a rule, so that I know how
Mhm.
to bend it. And but I also like to have the discipline. So it's I'm somebody who's a big champion of balancing.
Hmm.
And
Right.
I think a lot of my work, a lot of who I am, a lot of what I write, I write a lot, and a
Yes.
lot of what I write, all of that comes from that core belief that everything is fine if it's in balance, and the moment it's off balance, that's when things go wrong. And it can be like, you might think, oh, it's something good, so we need an overdose of that, but that's not the way to look at it. So yeah, I guess that's a very philosophical description of me, but that's what.
No, I think that's a very interesting description because you're a very creative person. I read that you're a trained dancer, you performed on stage, you're a writer, and now you're a designer. Seeking to resolve or fill in a gap that's a big yawning gap in our fashion market or in our clothing market, and you're trying to fill it. So I think this describes you very, very well, right? What I'm getting is a very, very interesting balance of the yin and the yang. Somebody who's creative but is also practical and solution oriented. So I really love the way that you're talking about balance, right? But tell me, I want to start off by just getting your perspectives on what does fashion actually mean to you?
Fashion for me is, when you had a forerunner in the earlier days, there would be kings coming, and before that, there would be somebody running in front of you and announcing the king is coming. That's what fashion is. So it
Okay.
goes before you,
Yeah.
not exactly with the same time gap as a forerunner, but it kind of goes before you. And even
Yeah.
before you open your mouth, it
Yeah.
talks about you at that
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
your body, your mind, your emotions for that
Mm.
moment.
Hmm.
And you're not saying anything.
Yeah.
There are no words. But the
Yes.
moment you enter, we do that, right? People go, oh my
Yes.
God, he's such a nice and flamboyant person.
Yes.
Or that's such a sober person right there, or those kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or if somebody, I mean, so often we hear somebody's really decked up and like, you're going for a wedding or what? We
Yeah.
pick up cues like that, right? So it's
Right.
about who you are at that moment.
Yeah.
And that is where, Rekha, I think when I heard you talk earlier about women in fashion, I kind of think that while we think they are the main consumers of fashion, but men
Mm-hmm.
are equally
Yeah.
into it because they also want to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
So it kind of is like an identity marker. And the best part
Yeah.
is it's not a fixed identity marker. Tomorrow
Yeah.
morning you want to go to, let's say, your child's school. As a mother, you dress up in a certain way and then you are a
Yeah.
mother.
Yeah.
At this moment, if you want to just whatever be a belly dancer, you're a belly dancer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what you're saying is fashion is primarily a method of self-expression for all of us, right?
Yes. It has always
And
been, we accept it or we don't. It has always
yeah.
been like that. And
Yes.
what you had earlier mentioned about that struggle
Mm.
that women often have, that struggle is not because they don't identify with the fashion out there.
Yeah.
It, of course, is a large part of it. But the main problem is we very often don't know who we are. And how do we want to come
Exactly.
across? If I don't know what I want to say about myself, I cannot pick up the things that, put it all together.
Absolutely, you're right. Also, it's very interesting for me. I look at it from the reference point of generations. For instance, I remember my mother. When my mother hit her 40s and her 50s, which is almost the age I am now at. I remember her thinking that she had to dress in a particular way. She had to, she had to wear certain types of clothes. She could not deviate from a certain color palette. She could not deviate from the kind of clothes she was wearing. They were very fixed notions. And I find it always very intriguing that I'm almost her age, like when she had developed these very fixed notions about how much she could dress up and how much she could not. And the way I dress is very, very different from how she is. So it's really such an indicator of who we are and how we are showing up in the world. And of
Yeah.
course, there are many constituent elements to it, right? Like comfort and all of that, right? So
In fact,
tell
what
me,
you kind of
yeah,
said is it's like, in the previous generation, our
yeah,
mothers were told that they can only be certain things, which then
yeah.
reflected in the color palette, in the kind of garments and everything. And you are breaking it, that idea of what you can be, being told in a certain way by the society. The society tells you can only be this, and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll do what I want to do. And that's reflecting on what you're wearing.
Yeah, I think also we are the product of our times, so we do have a lot more freedom than our mothers did in terms of we are
Yep.
going out, we are working. Being a single woman is not as much of a problem as it was. However, you're also very mindful of the social norms around you. So it's always a decision at each point in time, saying what aspect of me do I want to bring out, and how much of me do I want to bring out at any given point of time,
Yes. The
right?
balancing act.
The balancing act, right? But however, it's very interesting that when we talk to a lot of women, and I do talk to a lot of women about fashion, because I consider it as an integral part of their visual brand, how they show up, right?
Yep.
And there is this very strong perception that fashion, you need to be a certain way, you need to have a certain body type, or a certain
Absolutely.
you need to fit a certain mold to be fashionable. You need to have access to certain, the latest trends, or you need to know the latest colors. You need to know all of that to be fashionable, failing which you're not fashionable. There's also a perception amongst a lot of women that I talk to who say, my body type is for Indian wear. I wear saris. I don't wear Western clothes, and therefore I'm not fashionable. Right. So there are a lot of notions about fashion, which is very driven by the external points. Right.
Yep.
And one of the problems is when it is driven by the external reference points, it can be narrow and limiting, right? So
Yep.
as a designer, as somebody who runs a label, what are these limiting, what are the limitations you see in the way fashion is represented in our mainstream today, and how does that stop us from embracing fashion? What is that barrier it creates between us seeing ourselves as being able to access fashion, or even in terms of being deprived, right?
Yep.
Like, what are the barriers that you see, which comes from the narrow interpretations of fashion in the mainstream?
I'm going to, this is like the Pandora's box. So I'm going to start, and you have to stop me at some point.
No,
Uh,
please go ahead.
so the biggest thing is, most of us, men or women, we don't
Hmm.
feel beautiful enough. We don't feel attractive enough.
Hmm.
And if I can just take a sidetrack, it's very interesting that it's when I lost my body in its non-disabled form. It's when I got a
Hmm.
disability and I was struggling with that. It's that journey. It was like a best thing that happened to me, because I started feeling actually beautiful. And I was like,
Hmm.
not just oh, my inside. No, I felt like my every inch of my body, however it is,
Hmm.
straight, crooked,
Hmm.
painful, not painful, I was like,
Hmm.
wow, this is like an amazing thing that I have. And
Hmm.
I think that that makes a difference. So we
Right.
don't feel beautiful.
Right.
Again, men, women, doesn't
Hmm.
matter. And I've seen kids, they take to whatever the kids fashion very quickly, because they think they're like the apple of their parents' eyes. They're really great. And it's only as
Yeah.
they grow up do these things start piling in. Next is,
Right.
the entire industry is trying to tell you that there's a trend,
Yeah.
and nobody is trying to ask you what is it that you want.
Hmm.
Even you are not asking that. If
Right.
somebody is saying, I don't think I have a body for a Western wear, I want to wear Indian wear, the question is that what you want? And if that's what it is, great. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that should be enough to think that you're fashionable because you're wearing yourself. So
Yes.
the more the industry is trying to push you to wear a trend, I try and
Yeah.
sit with my clients who connect with me personally and say, wear yourself, whatever it is. Let
Yeah.
me know what's your favorite color. I don't care what's happening,
Yeah.
you know. And then they would
Yeah.
very shyly tell
Yeah.
me, is yellow okay? I'm like, if you like it, yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that, and if you notice, many of us, we try to wear
Mm.
very low, dulled down colors, not because we like them, but
Yeah.
because we're kind
Yeah.
of hiding somewhere. Yeah, it's like, oh my god, it's too loud for me.
Yeah.
But are you loud? If you
Yeah.
are, you know. So that's
Yeah.
the other one. Then what happens is that we are taught to dress for someone else,
Yeah.
and I do that myself very often, but not to please
Yeah.
the other person. I do that when I know that if the other person is happy seeing me in a certain way, that would make me happy. So in a way, it's very
Yeah.
self-reflexive. So if you are
Yeah.
going to dress up at all, ever, do it for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course,
Absolutely.
I'm pretty
I
sure if
agree.
you're going in a certain way, in a certain place, you wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
This is the very interesting thing about fashion. Fashion actually always talks about being exclusive,
Yeah.
extraordinary. But all of
Yeah.
us, and I assure you, all of us, we actually want to be a
Mm-hmm.
part of everyone. We don't want to be somewhere up there.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. We, of
Yeah.
course, want to stand out,
Mm.
we want to be special. But again, the balancing act
Mm.
where we want to belong to the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are the, like, I feel like these are the main problems which uh, is the
Yeah.
barrier. And then what happens is suddenly everything for women, suddenly everything that you see is in a strange R-shaped
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
cut, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
and
Yep.
you're just standing there wondering, looking around in
Mm-hmm.
a shopping mall, like, who exactly is this meant for? Because I can't see anybody whose shape and this is matching.
Yeah.
So then you take some 10 of pieces, you go to a trial room, none of them actually fit you. You kind of come
Yeah.
close with the three or four of them.
Yeah.
And then automatically you're made
Yeah.
to feel that it's not for you. And
Yeah.
because there's so many out there, you're in
Yeah.
a mall, it gives you that mental kind of a disbalance, thinking that there's
Yeah.
something wrong with me, I must go to the
Yeah.
gym tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the problem
Yeah.
is, no matter how much you go to a gym tomorrow, you will not have an hourglass body because your body is meant
Yeah.
to be a pear-shaped one. Even if you're like perfect weight and
Yeah.
perfect everything, the shape, you are made in a different way. So, and the more you push yourself, your body
Right.
doesn't like it, you're not happy. It's a very unhappy situation. And who has ever looked good looking sad? Even Mona Lisa has a smile.
Yeah. This is very interesting what you say because I remember when I was working on my photo shoot, when I was putting my wardrobe and my clothes together for my photo shoot. This is the first time I've actually sat down and looked at myself and say, what do I like? Who am I? How do I want to show up? And it was very interesting. I knew I was a pear shaped, I had a pear shaped body. And I was looking at styles for a pear shaped body. Now, the interesting thing was, as I was looking for styles in the pear shaped body, I intuitively saw something and I would know I will still not look good in this. And that is where I realized that it's not just enough to know what your body shape is. You need to know what your proportions are as well. You need to know, like, even these typification of the bodies, apple,
Yeah.
pear, it's not absolute. There are so much of overlaps between the body
Yes.
shapes, which means you're so unique. Your whole body is so unique, and the only way you can really figure out what works for you is to go out there and try and explore and experiment, not be afraid and tell yourself that you're not good enough,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So tell me something. You are a very vocal advocate for inclusive fashion, right?
Yeah.
What does inclusive fashion mean, and why is it important for fashion to be inclusive?
So okay, we all have heard that one size doesn't fit all. So why should one design,
Yeah.
one pattern, one anything fit all? And the word inclusion or universal design, also these two words have been
Hmm.
used very often in so many ways that I
Hmm.
have decided to, every time I use it, to define it before going ahead. And for
Hmm.
me, it's not about creating something that's going to be for everybody. It's
Yeah.
going to be a place. It's not a
Yeah.
thing, it's a place
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
you find everybody can find something for themselves.
Yeah.
Stretching it a little ahead, there always be some things where you can talk about, which I call as the optimum design. So it is something
Hmm.
which is at an optimum, which means it caters to, instead of 20%, it will cater to 60% or
Yeah.
80%. I don't
Yeah.
even aim to think that any one design will cater to 100%. And a very
Yeah.
important example here, because every time we talk about design and inclusion and we talk about disability, immediately people start talking
Hmm.
about a wheelchair because that's the only disability they can
Yeah.
relate to. So I kind of
Yes.
want to take this chance to talk about that. So if you're in a
Yes.
wheelchair, you want a ramp, and people
Yeah.
think, oh, okay, so if you have a ramp, that's the most inclusive thing that you can have. But that's not universal design. Even if you have a ramp, you would still want steps. And
Yes.
I tell you why. Because the person going in a wheelchair would need the ramp. Some person who may not be
Yeah.
able to walk very easily would want the ramp. But
Yeah.
someone who has a balance problem would actually want a
Yes.
step and not a ramp.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
see, even something as lovely as the ramp doesn't really solve everyone's problem or everyone's
Absolutely.
requirement. So now the thing is, the ramp doesn't solve everything, the steps doesn't solve everything, but the building as a whole, if it has
Yeah.
both, it solves. And
Right.
for me, that's what. So that for me, inclusive fashion is giving enough options so that people can choose from.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
why is that important?
Yeah.
We are all wearing clothes, right? That's why it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
It's as
Right.
simple as that. It's supposed to be a basic fundamental need,
Yeah.
and it better be met.
Absolutely.
Stretching it forward, I think we all deserve,
Yeah.
it's almost a right to have the space where we look beautiful, we
Yes.
feel happy,
Yeah.
and we feel like ourselves. I mean, even
Right.
if we are sad, we are, the way I want to dress up, that should be able to tell the whole world that, hey,
Yeah.
stay away from me right now, or come and
Absolutely.
give me a hug right now, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That conversation that your clothing is supposed to do for you,
Yeah.
everyone has the right to that.
Right. Absolutely. If I may, Shamita, I think one of the things that we should be, exploring, you and I, given our interest in this area, is also look at the fact that, particularly with women, right, there are many, many, many ways when we are limited by the lack of options. For instance, if you just take a woman, like when we talk about, one of the things that always makes me think is, why do we talk about inclusive fashion only in the context of persons with disabilities? Because
Yep.
all of us at some point have had some situation where we haven't been able to dress up. I think when I wrote my post, I talked about the time when my mother broke her hand. I know on numerous occasions I have sprained my ankle and I couldn't wear shoes. That there were no shoes to fit my feet, right? So every time stepping out is a problem. I do know that women who go in for surgery, and particularly now in the 40s, I know a lot of women who are getting hysterectomies, and I know that that's a sore point for them as they're recovering. I know that, I've heard parents of children with autism who have said that the fabric matters because,
Yeah,
that can trigger a thing. Uh, just recently, I read something about big fashion labels in the US getting into the area of inclusive fashion by looking at the kind of fabric that will support people with chronic illnesses. Because
yeah,
sometimes you have a rare disease or a chronic illness where your skin cannot wear the popular materials, right? So it's also really about, I mean, I kind of, I mean, tell me your thoughts about it, because diversity, there's so much of diversity in the word disability,
yeah.
right?
I
And
wouldn't even go as far as disability. I mean,
mhm.
inclusive fashion, as we say, it's for everyone, right? I mean, aren't there people who feel like
Yep.
um, they're more flat chested?
Yes.
So is
Yes.
your fashion, looking at that? Some of us, aren't we a little conscious of being just the opposite, totally voluptuous?
Yes.
What about
Yes.
fashion for that? So it's, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just saying, if we, I'll give you a very small example. After I
Mm.
started being conscious about me not
Mm.
having clothes thanks to my disability, because I was not able to fit into them. And
Yeah.
the joke in my family is that I was never a fashion conscious person. And so now
Mm.
I'm now a founder of a fashion brand without being a fashion conscious person. So, and I think that's where I bring in a different voice in the industry,
Mm.
because you don't have to
Mm.
be fashion conscious, you just have to be yourself. And
Yeah.
when I was not getting that option, but then I started thinking about it. It gave me enough time to think about it, and I was like,
Yeah.
I have never been comfortable wearing
Mm.
most of the
Yeah.
stuff that's there. Even
Yeah.
when I was totally non-disabled,
Yeah.
I was, taking my leaps and bounds, doing my karates. I was into some most flexible yoga postures. So there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with the flexibility of my body. I didn't
Yeah.
have any problem with movement, mobility,
Yeah.
but it's just those clothes that I felt like, oh my God, like I
Yeah.
don't fit them, they don't fit me, something is happening here. And
Yeah.
slowly it also started giving me a lot of body image issues. And
Yes.
that's like since I was in my teens. I
Hmm.
very bravely fought that without acknowledging it by just wearing
Yeah.
oversized t-shirts because I'm this cool person,
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I had to slowly, when I realized that, okay, there is a problem. And I think the best
Hmm.
way to deal with the problem is to just say it aloud, like, there is a problem.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I decided that if I have so much of body image issues, what can I do about it? This was still a time when I did not have problems with dressing up independently.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
or at least I didn't think I have problems with clothes.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember there was a call for an art school where they wanted to do nude art, and they wanted
Hmm.
nude models for like a few
Hmm.
hours, 2 3 days or something. I was like, this is the perfect moment for me to
Hmm.
take up this assignment and
Yeah.
get over the damn image issue that I have.
Hmm.
So I'm somebody who fights it at an extreme. Clearly, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, clothes are not suiting me, let's just go totally nude.
No, but this is a very important point you make, because I think, like I was somebody who used to say, I don't like shopping, I don't like going to malls. I have to walk in, look at two, three things. If it fits, and I can see the panic start internally. The whole process of shopping is not comfortable until and unless my body is a certain way,
Yeah,
unless it looks a certain way. And we never look at the problem as we don't have enough choices. We are being
yeah,
given, it's like one, three or four sizes, three or four cuts, three or four fabrics, and that's what you've got to work with. You're not
yeah,
really getting the palette to work with, so you can fully, what do you say, fully express yourself and discover who you are,
yeah.
right?
The number of people who have come to me who don't have a disability, not only do
Mm,
they not associate with it, but they actually, I mean, the body
yeah.
and their minds, mentally, intellectually,
Mm,
they don't really have a disability. They're non-disabled people,
yeah. Yeah.
but they've said, thank God of what you're doing, because I've never liked the clothes that are there. And by not liking, it's not about the color or something. It's like I never could fit in.
I don't
And
belong.
that's, yeah, you don't belong.
It
And
just
that's
it
why
doesn't belong. Yeah.
one of the things I keep pushing for when I find somebody's not very confident and not comfortable, I'm like, don't ever try to fit into your clothes. Make sure
Yeah.
your clothes fit you.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that's the mantra. That's how it should be. You are who you are. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
Take all the space there is to be taken.
Yeah. So, Shamita, something that stands out to me here is, you've literally given us a very broad picture of your journey of, not really having this good relationship with the clothes, with fashion, and then now going to a point where you're saying, okay, I have a totally different perspective on this, right? And clearly, it's from our journey and that we really are able to arrive at this wisdom, to
Yep.
uh, take on factors that pertain to our identity. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in depth that made you transition from somebody who was not fashion conscious to being the
Yep.
founder of an inclusive label in a very niche segment, if I may say so?
Yeah. I mean, I don't call myself niche because it's meant for everyone.
No,
So,
I'm
but
talking about the
the
segment.
thought
I'm
is
talking about
niche.
the segment. Yeah, the
Yeah.
thought
So
is
I'm
niche.
just trying to say
That's
the
what I
thought
meant.
is niche.
Yeah.
Uh, what I don't know where to start. I think it's a time when it wasn't even the time when actually asked for help, because it was not the easiest thing to do, asking for help when you're a fully grown adult woman. And
Okay. May I just suggest that you start from the beginning so we get a perspective because we haven't talked about your personal journey of having lost your mobility at all. So just to get the perspective
just
of
this
what
for the
yeah,
context, okay?
yes, for the context so that we understand where the
Why?
wisdom came from. Yeah, the why. Right.
So I started getting a pain, and at that point, I didn't know what it was. The doctors didn't know what it was. It took 3 years for me to get a diagnosis, and this is my 12th year with the illness, and doctors are still like, "We're not very sure of the diagnosis." And I'm like, "Will anything change if your diagnosis changes?" They're like, "Unlikely." I said, "Just forget about it. Just let's work
Hmm,
on
hmm,
getting better." So,
hmm.
we moved from a research mode of what is your problem to, again, my solution mode of let's get better. And
Yeah,
sometimes you can do that without really having the right scientific name. They had
yeah,
a more or less an idea of where in what bucket it falls. So it's an autoimmune
yeah,
disorder, affects the
yeah.
muscles, affects the joints. That's why the pain. Now,
Hmm,
with as it started growing, by
hmm,
the time I was in my early 30s, I
hmm,
started losing my mobility, and that happened very quickly.
hmm,
Uh, so it was like, first some, what do you call those, the crutches, and then the wheelchair, and then I was like flat in bed, where I was just moving my
hmm.
eyeballs and I was tapping my
Oh.
fingers.
Hmm,
And my mom, I think she still tears up just at the thought of it, because she's like, there's a time when, like, even if mosquitoes are biting you right there, and forget killing it, because
yeah.
my mom, she's like aggressively killing mosquitoes. I couldn't even, like, make them fly away or something like that. I couldn't turn in my bed.
Hmm.
However, before all of the severity came in, so it's a gradual process of losing,
Yeah,
right? Though it
yeah,
happened very
yeah.
quickly, it was still a gradual process. It wasn't like I wake up and then everything is gone. It's like I wake up,
Mm,
okay, my foot is not working. I wake up, oh, my knees are not working. And
mm,
that also kind of started giving me a continuous sense of loss,
mm.
because one
Yeah.
day your knees are not working, you kind of deal with your emotions of your knees not working. Okay, all right, fine. You're
Mm,
kind of just fine. And then exactly the next week or something, or the next day, who knows.
mm.
And it you go to sleep thinking, okay, your knees are not working, but you know how to deal with life right now. You've figured it out, you've accepted it.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
next day your knees are not working, that's okay, but suddenly you realize, not are your hips.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God, I've lost something again. So, there's a
Yeah.
continuous, like for
Yeah.
years on end.
Mm.
And I remember even after a time when I think I had lost everything,
Mm.
I suddenly found that my index finger was not moving.
Mm.
Oh my God, I cried and I howled, and everybody's like, what happened? And
Mm.
for everyone, it was like, after having lost every other thing, like all the other fingers are also gone. And you
Mm.
really, I did not react this way. I wasn't
Mm.
so emotional. And then they're like,
Mm.
what happened? I said, why should this one also go? Like it was like this
Yeah.
weirdest. And but yeah, what it took me a day to figure that it's okay. If I've,
Mm.
then it's again. So
Mm.
now when you're in this continuous sense of loss, it's
Mm.
not just about your body parts. It's actually, to be very honest, the least about your body parts. It's
Mm.
more about what you are doing. And then when you very instinctively try and do it, you're like, I can't anymore.
Yeah.
And one of the things you would instinctively want to do is like wear your clothes.
Yeah.
And then you realize, I can't anymore.
Mm.
And then it started from, oh, I can't wear this, but I can
Mm.
maybe do that. Then to a point where like, I actually can't do any of them. So better ask for help.
Yeah.
And that happened before I even gone into a very severe mode. So it
Mm.
was in a very early stage where I started losing any control over what I'm wearing, or at least
Mm.
wearing it alone.
Mm.
Now, this is also a very painful condition that I have. The
Yeah.
muscles, the joints, every bit is
Yeah.
paining. And for me,
Yeah.
I think somebody once asked which part of your body is paining. Now, I never want to say my entire body because I still feel like
Yeah.
there's so many parts of the body. I don't want to like tell the whole body that it's not working. So I started saying,
Yeah.
my jaws and my neck and my back and my shoulders and my elbows. And it just went on and on and on and on till it
Yeah.
reached the toes.
Yeah.
So he just said,
Yeah.
you mean your whole body? And I
Yeah.
said, no, I don't mean my whole body. I just mean the parts.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole body would also include, like, say, my forehead and my head, and my heart and my lungs. They're fine. And
Yeah.
so the fact that everything would be painful, and
Mm.
the severe stage which I was in for like 2 years or something, I couldn't even open my mouth to eat because the jaws
Mm.
were that stiff.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
my mom had to like force open and feed me. So I was kind of dealing with all that. And then
Mm.
for some reason, I got extremely upset by the fact that every single day I have to change my clothes because that's what people do and that's what's hygienic and blah.
Mm.
But it's
Mm.
painful.
Mm.
Even
Yeah.
when I'm completely submitting myself to someone
Yeah.
else physically,
Yeah.
and even after that, I'm not wearing anything which makes me look like myself, not any way that way I'm feeling. I might be on in bed, but I might be feeling on top of the world. My clothes don't say
Yeah.
that. My
Yeah.
clothes are just draping me into some weird, God knows what I was
Mm.
wearing.
Mm. Mm.
So then I got mighty upset. I was like, every day I cannot go through this.
Yeah.
And my first, see, I thought, I'm born in this 20th century,
Mm.
living in the 21st one. By now, any problem that human beings are supposed to have, it's been
Yeah.
solved. So very
Yeah.
confidently, I go on Google.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, there's nothing out there for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, this doesn't sound right. And then I thought, then, the curious me, the
Yes.
solution, I need a solution, right? There's a problem. And I'm a very true believer of it. If there is a problem, there is a
Yeah.
solution. It's
Yeah.
either outside or
Yeah.
inside of you, but it's
Yeah.
there. You just have
Yeah.
to get it. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, let's get it. And
Yeah.
I was very, very convinced that uh, accepting and adjusting, I cannot tell you how much I do not like those words, like adjusting
Yeah.
to something, compromising it. I was like,
Yeah.
adjusting myself to being in pain
Yeah.
every day for
Yeah.
something which is supposed to be a basic thing.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
not something that's, it's coming as raindrops. It's getting made in factories. Like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about here, It's like
Yeah.
it's being built by human beings, it's being designed,
Yeah.
made, stitched by human beings.
Yeah.
Then it has to be for human beings. It cannot be
Yeah.
that difficult. So
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, what's the next best thing to do? Let's figure out. Google search, Google search, Google search. I went on to a few designers. I said,
Hmm.
this is what is needed. And they said,
Hmm.
that's a brilliant idea, but we can't do
Hmm.
it. I was like,
Hmm.
really? So by the
Hmm.
time I was like in seventh or eighth of one of them, I think I lost my patience. So I said, I need something
Yeah.
that solves this. And
Yeah.
for the life of me, I did not think I'll start a company
Hmm.
or that I will actually sit and do it. But I had to find a solution.
Yeah.
Uh, what really happened was at that point I started, and I also noticed that I was becoming more and more shy in a weird way. Like I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
as you said, I'm a vocal person. I'm not a shy one who would hide herself,
Hmm.
at least not in a conventional way. And I realized that I was not very happy with people visiting me. I was not very happy getting on video calls. I was just not
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
And I decided, forget clothes. I need my happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's precisely when I started to figure out, what would that happiness mean for me? And if
Yeah.
it's in my clothes, because that's what I'm missing, then what
Yeah.
does that? What should that be? Should
Yeah.
it be a sari? Should it be a what? And that's when
Hmm.
I realized over time that I this whole thing about my body images started popping up in my head. I was like, guess what? This is not just a problem because I am sick and I'm not able to move
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a problem I've always had. I've just kind of put it under the carpet.
Hmm.
And this, I know for a fact, a lot of my friends, especially women friends, have this problem because
Yeah.
I know so many of them, they have this nice, beautiful dress and they would say, I'm going to go to the gym in 3 months' time, I'm going to fit into this.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that process, so, all of that. So basically, God just gave me so much time to think because I was like flat in bed. I had nothing else to do. I was just only thinking. And I was like, okay, this is the core problem. And it's not that I don't like fashion. It's just that I don't like other people telling me what to do.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's always been me. So I never
Right.
liked going to a mall where other people were telling me that my body should be an hourglass body and I should probably wear a red this winter and a yellow this summer. I hadn't figured it out. I hadn't put my fingers on it all through those years. But at that moment, I was like, that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. I didn't
Yeah.
have the independence to be me while I was
Yeah.
paying for it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the part where it changed. But I still didn't have a solution. The solution actually came from my sister
Hmm.
because I was so sure that I don't want to show my face anywhere outside my room.
Hmm.
And even to others who's coming inside my room, and I would have these little shawl over me. And I live in Calcutta. It's like humid.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hot. Most
Yeah.
people want to, you know, fill their ponds with their sweat. It's
Right.
as bad. And there I
Yeah.
am with shawls and God knows what all. I started having shawls of all seasons.
Right.
So then one day she's like, why do you refuse to do this? I said, because I don't have clothes. And she said, then we'll have to do something about it. So luckily she's also a lot like me. She said, then you have to do
Yeah.
something about it. As I've been trying and we have like no luck. She
Yeah.
said, I don't know anything about clothes, but let's figure this out. So then she took a skirt of mine, which is like nice and it has a lot of volume. She put it right up and suddenly looks like I was just wearing this, skirt and just about to go and take a bath or something like that. Then she
Hmm.
said,
Hmm.
no, I'll make it look better. And then she put a stroll around, which looks like sleeve and then like a little belt. So suddenly I had this amazingly beautiful dress made out of this random
Yeah.
ensemble, which was already there.
Hmm.
And that hit me. I was like, if this can happen, this basically
Hmm.
somebody styling me differently,
Yeah.
the same thing can happen with a little bit of stitching in here and there and something.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. I now know how to make my clothes, and I got. It was a struggle to get the right tailors and everything, but that happened, and we got some clothes for myself. Suddenly, everything was happy, and then it again took me somewhat 15 seconds, because by that time I had also started talking to many others who have chronic illnesses or disabilities, and everybody seemed to be having the same problem. Again, people have adjusted to it.
Yeah.
I am this one person who's like, why the hell should I adjust? There's so many things to adjust to. I have to adjust to my humidity.
Right.
I don't have a power over it. I have to
Yeah.
adjust to, like, the weather changes and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. I have to adjust to my illness. Why am
Yeah.
I going to adjust to something which I actually can have a say in?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, if I can do this for myself,
Mm.
it's an it's a waste of an idea if I don't do it for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how this whole thing, and to be honest, it really first started for people who have chronic illnesses and
Yeah.
disabilities, movement related problems for me. But as I said, more and more people started coming to me and said, oh my god, they're like, this is something even I would need. I have absolutely no mobility problem, but
Yeah.
and that's the thing. I said, if I had something like this 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have a body image issue.
I agree. I
So
absolutely agree.
throw it all out and do it for everyone.
Yeah. So I'm going to now, I would like for you to tell us more about adaptive fashion, right? Because adaptive fashion, inclusive fashion we've heard about, but adaptive fashion, particularly in India, we've not heard so much about, right? I did my homework, so I know a little bit more than I did, say, 2 months ago. But tell us what adaptive fashion is, and more than telling us, tell us how adaptive fashion makes a difference to somebody's life at a granular level. Like, why does it matter at a granular level? Help us understand that.
Let me first see if I can make the definition a little easier. As I said, inclusive fashion is not about like a fashion that suits everybody, right? It's like a
Yeah,
place where you get something
yeah,
for everyone.
hmm,
Adaptive fashion is that one piece in that
yeah,
place
mm,
that is meant for you.
yeah,
And the reason I really wish that word didn't even exist, but sometimes
yeah,
to make enough noise, you have to create a word.
yeah,
So it adapts to your physical requirements. And it
mm,
requires to not just your physical requirements, but your requirements.
yeah,
Ideally, that's
mm,
how everybody's clothes are supposed to be made. But
yeah,
since that's not how it's made, so it's a
mm,
way of telling people that wake up and do something a little differently.
yeah,
And that's all there is to adaptive fashion. So if your hands are not moving, can you make a top in a way or a shirt in a way where you don't have to move your hand?
yeah,
Like I said, don't try to fit into any clothes.
yeah,
Ensure whatever you are wearing that fits you.
right.
If I can put it in any other way, you are the gift, and
Got it.
your
Yeah,
garments are the gift wrapping, right?
right.
You
Yeah,
never buy a gift according to your gift wrapper. You buy the wrapping according to the gift. So be the
yeah. But
gift.
so how does that show, how does adaptive fashion show up in at a granular level, say in your everyday life? Can you give us an example to help us understand? Like you said, okay,
Yep.
a sleeve, but I read something about magnets instead of buttons, right? So can you give us like a few examples so we get an understanding of how how does fashion adapt to us and how do we demand those adaptations?
So if you think of something, I'll give you something which probably more and more people
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
can relate to. Women
Yeah.
who have not had enough pockets in their clothes for probably the longest time.
Yes.
When you start going out more, earning more, getting into this professional world, having a wallet which you can actually put into the pocket, you start
Yeah.
having that's so that fashion is adapted to you, right?
Got it.
Now, you talked about magnetic buttons, but you can also probably put some Velcro. Why does
Yeah.
everything have to come with a button? So
Absolutely.
we are already used to, like, drawstrings. We're used to
Yeah.
hooks. There are many
Yeah.
kinds of hooks. We're used to buttons. There are many kinds of buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't there be other things like velcros? Yeah.
Yeah.
So those and these are very small tiny things,
Yeah.
and that's where you are sometimes people are just like struggling. I have done it myself. I have created designs and then I'm like, what took people
Mhm.
so long to get to something as simple as this? And I tell you what it was. It was
Mm,
trousers which I had
mm,
put really long fabric loops which I can hold
mm,
so that I
mm.
can wear it, sitting down
Yeah,
without having to bend all the way because I can't bend all the way.
yeah.
Now, instead of calling somebody and, like struggle through it, I just needed two really long loops attached to my trousers. And
Hmm.
then suddenly it would be also good for people who have surgeries. It'll also be good for
Right,
people who have just had a baby. It'll also be good
right.
for people who have low back, some kind of pain
Yeah,
or a slip disc and
yeah,
something like that. I'm
yeah,
like, and the number of people I know in these, just the three or four categories I mentioned, they're just
yeah,
many. Also be good for people who are like belly wide and, really
yeah.
obese or something,
Yes,
can't bend. The number of people who can't bend down, many.
yeah, yeah.
Something as simple as this can solve it. And I'm
Right.
sitting and I'm marveling at my own creation, thinking like, why didn't people think about this before?
Right, right. So you're getting a lot of people who are writing in. Faisal says, beautifully spoken. He said this a little while back, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow. And Mike says, love your courage as always. Really happy that you founded something that meant so much to so many people. Faisal and Mike, thank you so much for weighing in with your comments. I can see there are other people who are weaving in and out of the conversation. If you have something to share, please do drop it in the comments box. And if you have a question, please do put that in as well. I will put it up on the screen for Shamita to answer. But Shamita, I'm going to now come back to a point. You're making a very strong case for uh, inclusive fashion being for everybody and not to like really earmark it as for persons with disabilities or people with having any particular. I'm sorry, Shamita, we've lost you. Okay, I think we've lost her for a second. Well, I can see, well, as we wait for her to come back online, I'm just going to say I can see a few likes. I can see Sayani Basu also. Sayani, I'm assuming you're Shamita's sister. She's spoken so highly of you in this conversation. And we're just very happy that you joined us. And everyone else who's joining us at this point in time, who's been listening to Shamita's journey. I know I'm blown away from all the conversations I've had. I knew about her journey only at a very broad level. To be able to listen to her, actually narrate her story, actually narrate the challenges she had, has been quite eye opening. Because I think one of the things that she made very very clear to all of us is that losing ability, losing flexibility, losing mobility is has got everything to do with not just losing a body part or not just losing functionality of a body part. It's really about losing a whole way of it's a whole way of living. Okay, Shamita, you're back. Thank you.
Sorry, it was the
No worries.
connection.
The connection problems. No worries, no worries at all. So, I was just kind of sharing with the audience how impressive your journey was, and how in all our conversations, I didn't know in this detail, and I think some of the, even when people talk about news reports and the loss of ability and flexibility and mobility, we, the words don't do justice to that journey, that progression. And when we actually hear you talk about it, it's suddenly very stark. We suddenly realize that this is not just about the body, it's really about losing a very important part of your life. It's so much bigger, and that space, every little joy matters, right? So that's been a huge takeaway for me. And you've been making a very powerful case for adaptive and inclusive fashion being for everybody,
Yep.
to the point where, so I, and that was actually going to be my next question, saying, is it for non-mainstream populations like persons with disabilities or people managing chronic illnesses or rare diseases or people with, who are neurodivergent? But I think you've answered that pretty much for me. So I'm just going to go. I mean, actually, I'm going to invite you to expand on it a little bit more very quickly and say, why does it matter? Why is it relevant for all of us? You know, Like we talked in the context of women, say maybe having being mothers or having being in surgery, right? But for somebody who is able, healthy, probably has no perception that there can be a situation tomorrow where you need, where you won't be able to dress yourself the way you want to. Why is it relevant to that person? Why is it relevant to the average person on the street?
I'll take this opportunity to just repeat what I had just said sometime back instead of expanding on it, because sometimes just saying the same thing over and over again probably makes more sense. 20 years ago, I didn't have any problem. I was extremely agile, I was extremely flexible. I thought I could wear whatever I wanted, but I actually couldn't,
Yeah,
because it gave
yeah,
me, it made me feel like an alien. It gave me body image issues. It made me feel I didn't belong.
mm-hmm.
It did hit my confidence in a weird way. I mean, I got over it, or I handled it differently. I wouldn't say got over it. It took me on to be a nude artist to figure out, a nude model to figure it out. Uh,
Mm.
why push anybody through that?
Yeah,
Why do you want to go through that kind of a, you think it's all about the body, but we have been saying clothes is about you. It's about your
yeah,
mind, it's about your emotions. Why would you want anyone to, it's not about tomorrow. So, I'm saying, please don't think that inclusive fashion is for your tomorrow, an uncertain one, or about your grandparents, or about the friend that you know that who is sick. It's about you right now, right here.
yeah,
And if you think that the, so it's not like the mainstream has absolutely no designs that is suitable.
yeah,
It's just that the thought process, it has come out, the design has come out by chance. It hasn't
yeah,
come out because of a thought process.
yeah,
And the moment we add the thought process to the same design, it becomes a part of your inclusive fashion line. We are not
absolutely.
talking about something which is out there. We are talking about something which is very much in here.
Mm.
And I think we all owe it to ourselves, man, woman, children, or any other gender.
Yeah,
We owe it to ourselves to feel good in what we
yeah,
are wearing. And it's something that we do 24 hours a day. It's not something that we are
yeah,
just doing for a few seconds or a
yeah,
few minutes a day. It's every
yeah,
single day that we do it. So if you're not going to take care of yourself, who will?
yeah. So, which brings us to the next question, how do we do it? Like, I mean, not everybody is a designer. Almost everybody is either online shopping nowadays or they're walking into the mall and picking up stuff. There are people who do it the old-fashioned way, who go to the local tailor or has someone who's stitching for you. So in that case, yes, you can actually ask and direct. But
But even there, if you have met with those some of the tailors, they're like, no, no, you must wear this style, and the back should be like
absolutely,
that. Yeah.
absolutely. But the question is now, how do we champion it? Because if we are waiting for people to give us the clothes, if we are going to look out for it, it's not a proactive way, right? As an individual, how can somebody proactively champion, the demand or drive a demand for inclusive fashion or adaptive fashion in the mainstream? What can they do?
Create communities and talk about, you don't even have to create them. Like I have my handles, come and talk
Yeah,
about it. The more you
yeah.
talk about it,
Hmm.
it's not only that you're talking to me, it's a social
Hmm.
media platform. Other
Yeah,
brands are listening to you. So get
yeah,
that out. More and more
yeah,
people have to hear it. And stop buying whatever is in trend.
yeah,
If yellow is in trend, if you don't like yellow, don't buy it.
yeah,
Buy whatever else that you want. Buy the black or the white, and the pink.
yeah,
Next is, I very truly say this, there's so many ways that people talk about fast fashion, this fashion, that fashion, conscious fashion.
yeah,
None of that matters. Just
yeah.
make it your fashion.
Absolutely.
If you like something, there's no power on this planet, and we all know that we have those torn tops or those t-shirts that we wear no matter how old they are.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of clothes that you need to buy. You don't have to wear clothes that make you sweaty and uncomfortable and itchy, and you're trying to go to the washroom to somehow set yourself up. No, Maybe because we're not used to this thinking, just give yourself a few weeks, a few months, see
Yeah,
what you really like, and see if you can get
yeah,
different designs like that. Come to
yeah,
designers like me who's happy to do it for you, not only from our regular line, but also in a
yeah,
separate bespoke wear.
yeah,
Speak up.
yeah,
If your local tailor tells you that no, no, I will make it a little tighter, a little loose, you say no, this is how I want it.
yeah.
And most of us are, I think before anything, we it comes back to the very first thing that I said, which is like, just look at yourself, smile at yourself, and
Mm,
somehow in the next few months truly believe that you are beautiful, because you are.
yeah,
And if that's true, then whatever color that you're wearing and whatever designer you're wearing, whatever label you're wearing, you will still look great. And if you don't believe that, the best of designers in the world won't be able to help you.
absolutely, absolutely. Also, very interestingly, as I was doing my homework for our conversation, something that, some of the statistics that I came across was the fact that inclusive fashion and adaptive fashion are becoming mainstream, particularly in the US and the UK. In fact, the most recent reports show that the adaptive wear market is scheduled to grow to almost 410 billion by
Yeah.
2027, right? And big fashion brands like Tommy Hilfiger are all taking the lead on this. It's only in the context of, say, India or maybe even parts of Asia that this conversation is not happening. And I think Shwamita makes a very important point of speaking up. If you are doing anything, if you are using adaptive wear, if you are creating stuff, it's not about, I really love the fact that you talked about your fashion and speaking up about your fashion and embracing it and celebrating it, because I think that's truly what, that's truly how you adapt, and how you
Yep.
really you drive the demand for fashion that works for you, rather than being led by your nose over there. So this has been such a great conversation. We're almost at top of the hour. Shamita, any last words before we wind up for the evening?
My famous last words, I guess, is like, make make sure make sure you wear, you do, you think whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think following your joy, that's the
Yeah.
mantra we all should be following. And honestly, all of us would be living in a much better world if we were following our joy, because then you're just being happy. You don't really have time to worry about anything else, and you are also more resilient for it, right?
If you have 30 seconds, I'll probably share a incident, or incidents,
Sure,
like
sure,
a thought
sure,
process.
sure,
You know how
sure.
it is when you are a entrepreneur and you're a startup entrepreneur, you're the CEO of the company, etc., etc., and then you get invited and then you're expected to be in a certain dress up.
Yeah,
The number of times I have broken the law of
yeah.
that dress code. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I have to say that sometimes people did initially like, who is she, where is she coming in, she doesn't, she's not wearing the long palazzos and this and that. Sometimes if I'm in the wheelchair, it gets even more complicated, because they're like, she's in a wheelchair, so like there are no rules for her, which is weird,
Yeah,
because you feel like you don't really
yeah,
belong. And sometimes if I'm not in the wheelchair, then people are like, but she hasn't dressed the part, right?
yeah, yeah,
But I have dressed to what I wanted to.
yeah.
And it has taken me probably 30 seconds to a minute, sometimes 2 minutes, for all of them
Mm,
to still take me seriously.
yeah,
So, yes, it's a great idea to dress the part, but if that's not what you want to wear, because I did not want to wear a suit, I did not want to wear those trousers, I
yeah,
wanted to wear what I wanted to wear.
yeah,
And of course, I wasn't wearing a swimming costume.
yeah,
It wasn't trying to have a rebel out there. It was just trying to be me, the way
yeah,
I see myself in there. It has never even taken more than 2 minutes. It has never been the third minute. Within 2 minutes, people are taking me seriously. People are talking to me as the CEO. People are
yeah,
talking to me as an entrepreneur. And I have also broken a few other rules, like, oh, you're not supposed to laugh, you're not supposed to, have fun, you're not supposed to joke, especially when it's a woman entrepreneur out there.
yeah,
The
yeah,
tussle, the power that you have to push through and say, my voice matters. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be loud. I don't want to be aggressive. I don't want to lose my personality trying to
Yeah.
fit in something. I'm somebody who laughs. I'm somebody who is, you know, going to say this as softly or as loudly as I want to, not
Yeah.
because of the power that is there. And when you
Hmm.
hold yourself to that, I
Yeah.
think the world will listen to you. Might take them 30
Yeah.
seconds, 2 minutes, worth it.
Absolutely. I think those are wisdom for all of us to embrace, because to even know what your fashion is, what your style is, what your visual image is, as we call it, the personal branding lingo, you have to have a good sense of who you are in that moment. You have to know who you are. That you don't have to have it's not a final cast in iron sense of self, but it is an evolving sense of self. And in that moment, this is who you are, and this is how you represent. This is how you show up. So, that's a very, very powerful, bit of advice that you have shared. Thank you once again, Shomita, so much for joining us. I want to say thank you to to everybody who's been weaving in and out of the conversation.